Come closer, children. Let Grandma warm her old hands before she opens this chapter, I said, pulling the shawl tighter around my shoulders. The room was quiet, only the soft ticking of the clock filling the silence. Your eyes looked at me curiously, wondering why my voice carried such a heavy sigh. There was a night, I began slowly, when everything I thought I could rely on vanished, like smoke carried away by the wind. I was only 21 then, barely a woman, though life forced me to grow up much sooner. My father had passed away 6 months earlier, and my mother's health had weakened under the weight of grief. My siblings, 3 brothers and 1 sister, were older and already building their separate lives. I believed, foolishly, that family remained family no matter how far life pulled them. That night, rain fell like the sky was grieving with me. I had just lost my first job. The shop I worked at had closed without warning. My landlord wanted the rent immediately, and when I couldn't pay, he told me to leave by nightfall. I packed what little I had into a cloth bag and hurried to the one place I believed would give me comfort: my childhood home. The lights inside glowed warmly. I could hear laughter, clinking cups, my sister's voice scolding one of her boys for spilling tea. For a moment, I smiled. Home was still home. But when I knocked, the warm sounds faded. My eldest brother opened the door halfway, blocking the entrance with his body. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply, as if I were a stranger on the street. I lost my job. I have nowhere to go tonight," I stammered, shivering from the rain. Behind him, my sister whispered, "Don't let her in, Bai. Once she comes, she won't leave. We already have too many responsibilities." I felt each word like a stone striking my chest. My mother's frail voice floated from inside. "Who is it?" My brother hesitated, then lied, "No one, Ma. Just someone asking for directions." The door began to close. "Please, just for tonight," I whispered. "Just one warm room. I'll leave in the morning." His eyes shifted away from mine. "We can't help you," he murmured, almost embarrassed. Then the door shut, firm, final. I stood there, soaked to the bone, staring at the wooden door that had once opened for me 1,000 times without question. And in that moment, I learned a truth I never wanted to know. Sometimes the deepest wounds come not from enemies, but from the hands of those you call your own. The rain only grew heavier after the door shut in my face, as if the sky itself could not accept what had just happened. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the house that had once felt like a warm blanket. The voices inside softened, replaced by the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. My clothes clung to my skin. My hair dripped cold water down my back. I kept waiting, hoping the door would open again, hoping someone would call my name, hoping my mother would come out and ask why her daughter was standing outside in the rain. But no one came. Finally, I turned away, clutching my cloth bag to my chest. With every step, puddles splashed beneath my tired feet. I walked without direction through the narrow lanes of my village. Lights from other homes glowed warmly. Families gathered around dinners, prayers, and conversations. Each window I passed felt like a reminder of what I had lost, not just shelter, but belonging. I reached the old banyan tree near the marketplace, its branches stretching wide like a giant umbrella. I stood under it for a moment, letting the leaves shield me from the rain. I wanted to cry, but my tears felt frozen inside me. Hurt was slowly turning into something else. Numbness. Where could I go? Who would welcome me at this hour? With no job, no money, and nowhere to sleep, I felt smaller than I had ever felt before. Then, somewhere near the tea stalls, I heard the soft cry of a baby. I wiped my eyes and looked around. A small family, mother, father, and child, were taking shelter under a torn plastic sheet. They were strangers, yet the mother still held her child close, warming him with her shawl, humming softly. I watched them for a long moment, thinking, even in their struggle, they had each other. And I had no one tonight. As I walked further, something inside me broke, not loudly, but quietly, like a thread that snaps after holding too much weight. I slipped into a deserted corner of the local school building, under a narrow cement ledge. It wasn't warm, it wasn't dry, but it was a roof. My hands were trembling as I spread my shawl on the cold ground. I hugged my bag close and sat down, knees drawn to my chest. The night felt endless, the shadows long and unforgiving. Fear crept into me. What if someone found me? What if the storm worsened? But exhaustion eventually won, and my eyes grew heavy. Still, one thought kept haunting me. How could my own family turn me away? And as I closed my eyes, shivering on that cold cement floor, I whispered to myself, "This is not the end. I will survive this night." I didn't know then, but survival was only the beginning. The storm finally quieted sometime after midnight, but the chill remained sharp enough to sting my bones. I couldn't sleep. Every time my eyes closed, the image of my brother shutting the door replayed again and again. It wasn't the rejection alone that hurt. It was the ease with which they did it. No hesitation, no struggle, just a decision. A decision that I didn't matter. I sat under the cement ledge, hugging my knees, trying to keep warm. My stomach growled, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since afternoon. The night felt longer than any I had ever lived. Just when I thought the silence would swallow me whole, I heard footsteps approaching. My heart jumped. I held my breath. A lantern light flickered in the darkness, casting shadows that stretched like long fingers across the schoolyard. I tried to make myself small, hoping whoever it was would pass by without noticing me. But the steps stopped. "Child?" a soft, cracked voice whispered. I looked up slowly to see an old woman standing with a small lantern in her hand. Everyone called her Amu Chachi, the widow who lived near the school. She was known for feeding street dogs and talking to plants more than people. "What are you doing here at this hour?" she asked gently. I felt shame creep up my neck. I had nowhere else to go," I whispered. Her eyes softened, not with pity, but with understanding. She didn't ask for explanations, didn't question my presence, didn't demand details. She simply held out her hand. "Come," she said. "Nights are colder when faced alone." Something inside me cracked, not from Cain this time, but from relief. I hesitated for a second, then placed my trembling hand in hers. Her grip was warm, steady, and full of the comfort I had been denied earlier. She guided me to her tiny home beside the school. The door was old, the paint chipped, but when she opened it, warmth spilled out like a welcome embrace. A small clay stove glowed in the corner.
A thin but clean mattress lay against the wall. The room smelled of turmeric, soap, and old books. "Sit," she said, pulling out a stool. "You are shivering." She wrapped a faded blanket around my shoulders and handed me a cup of warm ginger tea. The first sip burned my throat, but I didn't mind. The heat felt like life returning to my body. As I drank, she quietly placed a plate of roti and lentils before me. I stared at it for a moment before hunger took over. She didn't interrupt me, didn't speak until my plate was nearly empty. Finally, she asked softly, "Who closed their door on you?" My eyes filled, but I swallowed the tears. "My own family," I whispered. She nodded slowly, as if she already knew this pain. "Ah," she said, "sometimes the doors that should open stay shut. But remember, child, life always sends another door, even if it looks small." Little did I know then, her door would change everything. I spent the rest of that night curled up under Amu Chachi's patched blanket, listening to the quiet crackling of the clay stove. For the first time in hours, the trembling in my body eased. Exhaustion settled over me like a wave, and before I knew it, I drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke, a thin beam of sunlight slipped through the window and warmed my face. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then the memories returned. The rain, the locked door, the walk through the night, and finally, the old woman holding out her hand. I sat up slowly. My body ached, but my heart felt strangely lighter. "Ah, you're awake," Chachi said, entering with a small steel tray. She had already prepared breakfast, 2 rotis, a little jaggery, and a cup of warm milk. She smiled. "Eat. Food tastes better when someone cares that you do." Her words, simple, gentle, felt like healing medicine. As I ate, she quietly cleaned, humming a tune I recognized from my childhood. She didn't press me with questions or ask for explanations. She simply existed beside me, like a soft lamp in a dark room. After breakfast, I insisted on helping her sweep the floor and wash the utensils. She tried to stop me, but I shook my head. "I don't want to be a burden," I said. She looked at me with eyes that carried years of wisdom. "You are simply a guest finding your strength." That sentence stayed in my heart like a warm ember. Later, she sat beside me, folding laundry with slow, practiced motions. Without looking up, she asked, "What will you do now?" The question stung, not because it was harsh, but because I did not know the answer. I haven't thought that far," I admitted. "I only survived the night." She nodded thoughtfully. "One night at a time, child, but you cannot stay hidden forever. Life does not wait for wounds to fully heal." Her words weren't a dismissal. They were guidance. She then told me something unexpected. "You can stay here until you find your next step." My eyes widened. "Are you sure?" She smiled. "My home is small, but kindness does not need space. It needs intention." I felt my throat tighten. How easily she offered what my own family withheld. But she added gently, "On one condition." I swallowed. "Anything." "You must promise to stand again, not just survive, but rebuild." Her words felt like a challenge and a comfort at all once. I nodded slowly. "I promise." That morning, as the sun rose over the quiet village, I realized something. It wasn't blood that saved me. It was compassion. And sometimes the greatest families are the ones we find along the way. The next morning began with the scent of sandalwood soap and the sound of Chachi heating water for tea. Her home was tiny, but every corner felt touched by warmth, something my own home had lost long before the night I was turned away.
After breakfast, Chachi placed a small cloth pouch in my hands. "Your clothes are still damp from the rain," she said. "Go wash at the community pump and wear something dry." I opened the pouch and found a simple cotton dress neatly folded inside. Tears stung my eyes. "I can't take this," I whispered. She shook her head. "Clothes are meant to be worn, not kept waiting in trunks." Her kindness had an old wisdom, quiet but powerful. I washed, changed, and returned feeling a little more like myself. The heaviness inside me had not disappeared, but it no longer felt suffocating. Small acts of care have a way of stitching broken pieces with invisible thread. But life does not pause for heartbreak. I needed a plan. "Chachi," I said as I helped her wash lentils, "I need work, any work. Do you know who might be hiring?" She thought for a moment. "Old Master Ragu at the temple school needs someone to help sweep, clean, and serve tea to the staff. It's small pay, but honest." "Small is fine," I said. "I want to start somewhere." Chachi nodded approvingly. "Good. Pride feeds no one." That afternoon, she walked with me to the school. Her steps were slow, but steady. When we reached, Master Ragu looked me up and down with his usual stern expression. "You look young. You ever cleaned classrooms?" "No," I admitted honestly, "but I can learn fast." "And you're not afraid of hard work?" I glanced at Chachi. She gave me a tiny nod. "No, sir," I replied firmly. "Hard work is easier than sleeping on cold cement." He stared at me, then huffed. "Come tomorrow at dawn. Don't be late." It wasn't much. A broom, a dustpan, and a few hours of sweeping floors and washing cups. But it was a beginning, a foundation, the first brick in rebuilding what had crumbled. As we walked back, Chachi hooked her arm through mine. "You did well today," she said. "But it's such a small job," I murmured. She stopped and turned to face me. "Child, do you know how big trees begin?" she asked. I shrugged. "With a seed," she whispered. "And a seed looks small until it becomes a forest." Those words sank deep into me. That evening, I helped her water her plants, scrub utensils, and tidy the house. And for the first time since my father died, I felt a sense of direction. Fragile, yes, but real. As the sun set, painting the sky orange and gold, I whispered to myself, "This is my seed, and one day I will grow." I woke before dawn the next morning, the world still wrapped in darkness. Chachi was already awake, her thin frame bent over the clay stove as she boiled water for tea. She moved slowly, but every action carried a tenderness that made the small room feel sacred. "Drink this," she murmured, handing me a steaming cup. "It will give you strength." I smiled. "Your tea could give strength to the whole village." She chuckled softly. "Only if the village remembers to be grateful." Gratitude, a word I had forgotten in the chaos of the last months. After tea, I wrapped my shawl tightly and headed toward the temple school. The morning air was cold but crisp. Each breath felt like a fresh start. Birds were just beginning to stir, and the faint orange ribbon of sunrise stretched along the horizon. Master Ragu waited near the doorway, leaning on his stick. "You're early," he said without expression. "I didn't want to be late," I replied. He nodded once. "Good." He handed me a broom, a metal bucket, and a cloth. "The classrooms need sweeping, the veranda needs mopping, and the kettle must be cleaned.
Don't rush, do it properly. I set to work immediately. Dust rose from the floors as I swept, dust mixed with chalk and the footprints of children who studied here every day. I wiped desks, washed old cups, carried water, and cleaned the teacher's room. My hands burned, my back ached, and sweat trickled down my neck, but I felt alive. Every stroke of the broom felt like I was sweeping away a little of the bitterness that had tried to settle inside me. Around mid-morning, the teachers began to arrive. Some glanced at me with curiosity, some with indifference, and a few with polite smiles. I served them tea quietly, and one of them, Madame Leela, placed her hand on my shoulder. "You work well," she said warmly. "Are you new?" "Yes," I said, "just started today." "Well," she smiled, "I hope you stay. Good workers are rare these days." Her kind words filled my chest with warmth. Even after losing so much, even a small recognition felt like sunlight on cold skin. When I finished my chores, Master Ragu handed me a few crumpled notes, my first day's wages. "It's not much," he said, "but you earned it." I stared at the money, small, humble, yet it felt like a treasure. That evening, when I returned to Chachi's house, she was waiting outside, sitting on her old stool. "So?" she asked with a knowing smile. I placed the small bundle of notes in her hand. Her eyes softened. "Ah, child, this is not money. This is proof that you can stand." A breeze rustled the leaves above us, carrying the scent of evening jasmine. I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not triumph, but a quiet strength I didn't know I possessed. That night, as I lay on the floor mattress, I whispered into the darkness, "Maybe I am not as alone as I thought." Days turned into weeks, and soon the school became more than just a workplace. It became a rhythm, a routine, a place where my hands found purpose. Every morning, I swept the same corridors, washed the same cups, and listened to the same chatter of children arriving with their bags bouncing behind them. But each day, my heart felt a little steadier. Chachi's home remained my sanctuary, the little island of peace where I returned each evening. We shared meals, laughter, and stories. Sometimes she spoke of her youth, of a husband who died too early, of dreams that life never allowed to bloom. But she always ended with something wise, something hopeful. One evening, while I kneaded dough for chapatis, she watched me thoughtfully. "You are getting stronger," she said. I smiled shyly. "I feel stronger." "You remember when you first came, your eyes were like broken glass, shiny but shattered." She tapped her chest gently. "Now they look like clay, soft but ready to be shaped." Her words struck me deeply. "You're the one shaping me, Chachi." She laughed. "No, child, I'm only giving warmth. You are shaping yourself." That night, as we ate, she suddenly said, "Do you know how to read and write?" I shook my head. "Only a little. I studied only until primary school." She nodded, as if expecting that answer. "What if you learn again?" My hand paused mid-air. "Learn? At my age?" She raised an eyebrow. "Is there an age limit on building a life?" The idea felt strange at first, me sitting with books like a child. But something inside me stirred, a spark I thought had died. The next day, I gathered my courage and approached Madame Leela at the school. "Madam," I said softly, "can you teach me after school hours? I can help extra in return." She blinked in surprise, then smiled warmly. Of course I'll teach you. So every evening after work, I sat with a notebook while Madame Leela guided me through letters, sentences, and simple arithmetic. My hand trembled as I traced each word, but slowly, painfully, beautifully, I began to read again. One afternoon, as I scrubbed the floor, I heard two teachers talking. That girl works hard, one said. Yes, replied the other. And she's learning fast. She has potential. Potential. That word felt like a door opening inward. A few days later, Master Raghu called me to his office. I stood nervously, wiping my hands on my skirt. I've noticed your effort, he said gruffly. Leela Madam tells me you are learning well. If you continue, perhaps you could help with basic tutoring of the small children next term? I stared at him, stunned. Me? Teaching? Yes, he said. Why not? Hard work deserves a ladder. When I walked home that evening, the sunset felt brighter than usual. Chachi was outside feeding her stray cats. She looked up. You look different today, she observed. I sat beside her and whispered, Someone offered me a ladder. She took my hand gently. Climb it, child. Climb it with all your strength. And so I decided to climb.
The months that followed were slow, but steady. Every morning, I walked to the school before sunrise, broom in hand, ready to clean, sweep, and serve. Every evening, I returned to Chachi's small home where warmth awaited me, along with her quiet guidance and unwavering faith. And every night, I practiced reading and writing with Madame Leela, slowly gaining skills I had once thought impossible to recover. I was no longer the frightened, rejected girl who had stood shivering at my brother's door that stormy night. I was growing, not just in skill, but in confidence, in resilience. Every small task completed, every lesson learned, every kind word received became a brick in a foundation I had begun building for myself. One afternoon, Master Raghu approached me in the school courtyard. His usual stern face softened slightly. You have done well, he said. You've shown dedication and patience. I think it is time you begin helping teach the younger children. You are ready. My chest tightened. Teaching. A small, almost unbelievable dream, but here it was, handed to me. I nodded, words failing me. That is an opportunity I will not waste, I finally whispered. He grunted in acknowledgement and walked away. That evening, when I returned to Chachi's home, I couldn't hide my excitement. I will teach, I said breathlessly. I never imagined, but now I can give something back, help children learn. Chachi's eyes gleamed, and she reached for my hands. Child, do you understand what this means? You have turned rejection into strength. You have taken a door that closed on you and found windows everywhere else. You've grown taller than the shadows of that night. Her words made me pause. I thought back to the rain-soaked streets, the locked door, the cold cement where I had spent the first night of my freedom. It had been terrifying, but every painful step had pushed me forward. Weeks later, I stood before a small group of children, teaching them letters and numbers. Their eager faces reminded me of myself, innocent, curious, sometimes afraid of the world. I realized that my pain had not broken me, it had shaped me into someone who could guide others.
someone stronger than I had ever been. I returned home that night, quiet and tired, but not defeated. Chachi was there, waiting with her ever-present smile. She poured tea and said nothing. We sat in silence, letting the calm of the evening seep into us. And in that silence, I whispered to myself, I survived the night. I climbed the ladder. I will continue to rise. And one day, my heart will be too full to remember the doors that once closed. Sometimes, children, the people who turn away are not the end of the story. They are the reason we learn to stand tall. And in that standing, we find the family we were always meant to have, those who walk with us, share our burdens, and light our way. That is how I learned to rise, and that is how I survived, even when my own family closed the door on me.